Hi guys, welcome back to Dadlicious Eats, and today we're going to be doing some baking. So this is a Korean pizza bread. Now, because my children are half Korean, we obviously have quite a strong Asian influence within the house. So this is one of my absolute favorite baked items when I go to a Korean bakery. We've got this delicious enriched dough with butter and with egg, and it's really light and fluffy. It's a little bit sweet because there's some sugar in, which is a little bit different than maybe a British bakery or European or US bakery would have. Because then we've got the savoury element. And we've got a nice hot dog in there, we've got cheese, we've got some other vegetables, we've got a little bit of ketchup, which you might think is random, but goes really, really well. As I mentioned in the last video, I've got my own website now, so www.dadliciouseats.com. So I will be popping the recipe on there shortly, so you don't need to sit there and write down all the ingredients and the method as you go along. You can just watch the video and then refer back to that later. Right, it's time to get cooking. So let's get started on the dough. So we need 1 3/4 cups of self-raising flour, that's 210 grams, 2 teaspoons of fast action yeast, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 egg, half a cup of milk, 45 grams or 3 tablespoons of butter, unsalted, and 2 tablespoons of sugar. So to start with, let's get a pan on the stove, get that nice and warm and pop in the butter. We're just going to melt that for a couple of minutes. Once that's done, turn off the heat, pour in your sugar and give that a good mix around. If you're a subscriber, welcome back. If you're not, now is definitely the time to get involved in the channel. I'd love it if you could subscribe, leave a like, it would really help me out, and I always get back to you if you leave a comment. So we're going to pour in the milk, and then we're going to add in the yeast. So we're going to give that a little bit of a mix, and we're going to leave that for about 10 minutes or so, just enough time for the yeast to start working. Once that's done, we'll pop in the salt, and we're going to break in the egg as well. So you can see we've got a lovely enriched dough, as opposed to a normal bread where you would have flour, yeast, salt, water. We've got the egg in there and we've got the butter in there, so it makes it really nice and rich. So this should be cooling down nicely. It'll still be a little bit warm, but that's fine. We're going to move on to the rest of it. So into a mixing bowl goes the flour. And now simply we're going to pour in the mixture from before. We're going to give that a nice mix around. Let's bring this dough together, and we want to get it to a consistency where it's easy enough to handle. There's not a great deal of kneading involved with this, as opposed to most breads where if you're making it by hand you might knead it for sort of 10 minutes or so. Really it's just a case of bringing it together. If you need to add a little bit more flour, go ahead. It shouldn't be particularly sticky. You don't want it too dry, but you do want it to be easy enough to handle. So just like this. So we're just going to pop this back into the bowl, cover it, put it in a warm place, probably for about an hour. And we'll come back in a bit. So an hour's gone, you can see the dough has increased in size. It's lovely and warm. As you take the lid off or the wrap off, you get this nice yeasty smell. So we're going to divide that up into 5. This makes 5 bits of bread. Let's just take a cutter, a knife, something sharp, whatever it is, and just divide those into roughly 5 equal parts. Some people will measure it and weigh it. I'm not particularly fussed about that. We'll just shape those into balls, and then we can move on to the next step. So it is time to get the hot dogs out. Now I'm using Balinki hot dogs, which in the UK I think are one of the better varieties. They've got a nice consistency. Unlike the US, where I guess hot dogs are a much bigger thing, we don't have a great deal of quality hot dogs to choose from, but these are the ones I tend to revert to, especially if we're doing anything Korean related. So we're going to stretch out one of these balls of dough, just like this, essentially to make it long enough to be able to put the sausage or the hot dog inside, and then we're going to seal up all of the edges. So that's looking fine there. And then we're going to repeat the process 4 more times. It's really very quick once you've worked out how to do it. And your dough is sticky enough so that it sticks together when you roll it out. However, it's not sticky enough that it's getting stuck on the workbench. Just alter the amount of flour in it if you need to get this consistency. So once those are done, we're just going to make the topping. So for that, we're going to pop in probably about half of a small tin of sweet corn. Obviously, any of these things you can replace or not include or add more of. We're going to pop in some spring onion, some red pepper, and then we're going to add in some mayonnaise. So you probably want a couple tablespoons of that, and we're going to give that a good mix around just to combine everything together. So this is the topping that's going to go onto the pizza bread before the cheese is added. So there's a lot of sweetness in here. So far we've had the bread, which has got sugar in it. We do have the savoury of the sausage, but then you've got a fairly sweet vegetable topping. And then we're just going to prepare some mozzarella. So just chop that up reasonably small. It doesn't need to be too finely cut. Just enough so you can pick up a handful and place it onto the bread. So it's time to get assembling. So we take one of our hot dog logs, as they are at the moment, and a pair of kitchen scissors, and we're going to cut diagonally through the sausage. Just like this. And then once you've cut the sausage, we're going to spread it out alternate ways. And it comes out looking like a little bit of almost like petals of a flower. So it's a little bit trial and error as you go along. But once you've done one, it becomes pretty easy to move on to the rest. And you'll find you'll get about 12 to 14 petals, if you will. And there we have it. That's that. Looking pretty good. So that's one done. We've got 4 more to go. And you should end up with 5 nicely cut pieces of bread. So just make sure they're spaced out fairly well as when they cook. You don't really want them touching each other. It doesn't help the bread to cook. So we're going to take our topping mixture, pop that on the top. And here you can add as little or as much as you like. Try and keep it on the bread itself though. That's looking good. So it's time to pop on the cheese. So take a good handful of cheese and place it on the middle of each piece of bread. And you'll find for these 5, probably 1 ball of mozzarella is sufficient. And finally, we're going to move on to the topping. I mentioned there was tomato ketchup on here. So we're just going to give it a good drizzle on each of these. And that adds that final bit of sweetness in the flavour. So we are going to leave these for another 30 minutes or so, somewhere warm, just so they can rise a little bit more. Once you've left it for 30 minutes, it's time to pop it into the oven. So we're looking at 180 degrees for about 25 minutes. After the first 15 minutes, I take it out, glaze it with a bit of egg wash, and pop it back in just to give a little bit of shine to the bread. But after 25 minutes, here we go. We've got our delicious Korean pizza bread. As we can see, this is nice and fluffy if we break it open. And it's really, really Moorish. I'd urge you to give it a try. Seems a little bit strange potentially, but absolutely delicious. Thanks for watching this video. I'll be back with more great recipes soon. Until then, take care, guys.